Hello, my name is Nicola Martin, and today I'm going to be talking about what is quality. So the contents for my presentation, I'm going to give a brief introduction about me, my career to date, and some of the areas I've worked in. And I'm going to talk about what quality actually is. I'll give you a definition there. I want to touch on culture of quality, quality in engineering. So if you're thinking about going into an engineering team, some of the aspects of quality that you might come across within those teams. Talking about standards in relation to quality, and themes, principles, and processes around quality. And then I'll conclude the presentation. So a big hello. My name's Nicola Martin, as I've mentioned. I love to talk about quality and testing, and the other areas that you might see me do talks about include diversity in testing, women in tech, diversity in tech, and mentorship. So you may see me talking about these things on other platforms, but if you want to reach out to me, you can do through LinkedIn. My link is below, or you can find me on Twitter at Nicola L. Martin, and I'll give you my email addresses later. So a little bit about me. For work, I'm head of quality engineering for a company called Adarga. We are primarily in the defense and government space, but we are a data science and AI company. I have over 20 years in tech in various roles, so including all of the test roles that I've done, which I'll touch on in a minute. I've also worked in project management and also as a business analyst as well. In terms of volunteering, I hold quite a few roles with member groups within the British Computer Society. So I'm vice chair for the BCS Special Interest Group in software testing, SIGiST. I'm also vice chair for the BCS Pride group. I'm inclusion officer for BCSWomen, and I'm also a mentor for BCS, but I also mentor privately. So if you want to reach out to me on the channels I've mentioned previously, please feel free to do that. I'm happy to discuss mentorship with you. I'm also a speaker and panelist on various different events, global and national. And I also have been nominated for a few things. I thought I'd jot these down. This year I've been shortlisted to appear in a book called The Voices in the Shadow, which is about the journey of Black women in tech. And so that's going to be published by GTA Black Women in Tech, and I've made the shortlist. So they'll be announcing the nominees shortly. I've also been mentioned and in the Computer Weekly long list for the most influential women in tech. And I've also made the top 10 rising stars in tech, also through Computer Weekly. In terms of the test roles that I've done, they're varied, and I've been working in testing primarily since end of the 1990s, so a very long time. But with gaps in between where I did other work because I was a contractor and consultant for a long time. So I started off as a UAT tester, and I've gone through most roles that you would associate with testing. Even program test managing, I was looking after global project and had teams onshore, nearshore, and offshore. And so very varied programs and looking after big teams, right to where I am now, where I work in a startup, and I'm currently the head of quality engineering, which quality engineering is a newer area of quality, but something that you'll see more and more regularly. And there are bigger companies like Zoopla and Siemens that have quality engineering teams. So I wanted to talk about what quality is, and I wanted to give you a definition of that before we move forward to talk about how that looks within an organization or within teams. So according to the American Society for Quality, quality is the totality of features and characteristics of a product or service that bear on its ability to satisfy given needs. Now, in a company or organization, you might see quality represented as the things that look after all the systems, the people, the processes. So that could be down to quality management, quality control, and quality assurance, which you'd probably be more familiar with because that includes things like testing. So what is the culture of quality? So according to Quality Magazine in 2020, the culture of quality is defined as an environment in which employees not only follow quality guidelines, but also consistently see others taking quality-focused actions, hear others talking about quality, and feel quality all around them. Now, you've heard the word quality a million times, but it's really important that it becomes a mantra, because once you start to work within engineering teams, product teams, any teams in tech, you will start to hear that word every single day. It should be something that is, given to people in terms of an overview in onboarding into new companies. And if it's not, it's something certainly that is starting to be done so that it from day one, you're always thinking about it, and not just in terms of the way that you work on different pieces of software, but also as a company, at company level, how processes, and other management type of things that are done to work to run a company are actually handled day to day. So you will hear the word quality a lot. You'll hear it a lot within the rest of my presentation, and I apologize in advance for that. Okay, so what are the elements of a culture of quality? So you've got a quality mindset here, collaboration, process improvement, and about being customer centric. So I'll break all of these down in the preceding slides, but it's really one of the main and most important things about collaboration across teams, for example, working with team members and wider members of your engineering product and delivery teams, customer success, that kind of thing, looking at process improvement and metrics to make things better, more efficient, and looking at customer feedback and being customer centric is really important. So I'll go on to those slides now and talk about those things in more detail. So starting off with the quality mindset. Thinking about quality first in all of your work and all that you do is really important. And that way you're embedding it from the start. You can't miss it if you're thinking about it, right? Applying quality to everything you do within a role that you go for is really important too. And it will be picked up by other people. It might rub off on them, and then those things become best practice. Look for ways to improve the work and the work that you do, and that all goes into building a quality mindset. In terms of collaboration, it's working with team members and wider members of your engineering product teams, as I've mentioned, delivery and customer success, for example, to ensure that quality is at all levels. So it may be that you even have to work with your leadership teams, for example, on some initiatives. So, that's working at team level, group level, project level, and even organization level as well, to ensure that it's something that, there's cross-functional collaboration and that these things are understood and worked on by all areas of the company. So process improvement and metrics, you'll hear this a lot when you start to work within, engineering teams or other tech teams. It's really important to have these in place because it shows you what you're doing, where you're possibly going wrong, areas of focus, and ways to improve. So you'll use quality improvement tools and metrics to resolve quality issues and deliver quality improvements. Everything should have a process focus. So although people don't particularly like processes once they start to work in teams, they should be things that run in the background that don't require your manual input. but just become part of every day so you don't need to think about them. Being customer centric is really important for an organization, but it's important for you if you become, say, a developer or even a tester. One of the big things I used to do when I was testing every day was think about how would this work, or how would this look to a user, so a customer, for example. And some of the bigger things that you might need to think about for a company and when you work for a company is some of the things I've got here. So, for example, that the customer needs and values are central to decision-making and daily operations, that you work with areas. So again, about this cross-functionally working, or if you actually work within a product team to ensure that the product reflects customer needs. And looking at it from an organizational view, and from the outside as being customer focused. So you've got internal customers, yourself, maybe the users, and also external customers, those that may be paying to use your product or your platform. And it's really important that when you're customer centric, that you're working towards exceeding those customer expectations. So in terms of quality in engineering, if you start to work within teams, you may start to hear these three areas in particular: quality control, quality management, and assurance. And all of these elements go towards making sure that you have quality across the board. So the control aspects are about maintaining standards, which I'll talk about a bit later. Processes, tools, and those tools that are used to control projects and product, and to produce the software. Quality management, which is overseeing all of the activities and tasks required to check the quality of the software. And you might be more familiar with quality assurance, because that's a big aspect of that is testing. And you'd be doing testing at several different points within the production of maybe a feature for a product or platform. So quality assurance in this slide is that it's the maintenance of a desired level of quality and verifying that the product meets the customer requirements. I've grabbed this because it's about my area that I work in now. So quality engineering, for example, draws on the good practices from different areas. So, for example, we draw on the good best practices from DevOps, Agile, and testing. So we automate testing. We make sure that testing is automated as much as possible. We draw on DevOps for CI/CD, so continuous integration and continuous development. And we draw on the best aspects of Agile as well. And in this slide, quality engineering includes analysis methods as well. So we do look at analytics and customer focus and things like that as well within quality engineering, and metrics for the development of systems to ensure that products or services are designed and developed, again, with that customer focus in mind of meeting requirements or exceeding expectations. So I mentioned briefly about standards earlier. So there are several quality standards that are around, but the most famous one of the bunch is probably ISO 9001, which is currently on 2015 version, and it's the International Quality Management System. That's usually at the organization level and is utilized to make sure that the company is following good practices, has processes in place for every team, department, whatever you refer to within the company that you go to work for. And it also, you can be certified for it as an organization. So somebody would come in and assess whether or not you're meeting the requirements to gain the certification for 9001. There are other standards as well that are more related to the production of software. So the Square standards, for example, which look at the functional and non-functional aspects of producing software and making sure that you meet the, you think about the elements within those pillars of quality. And I'll show you a diagram for that a bit later. And there are newer standards which are coming out because any company with an AI model at the core of their systems will want to understand what can they do for best practice. Now, there are AI regulations coming out maybe this year or possibly next year. I know there's been some delays due to the pandemic, but these regulations will cover things like, are the staff within your company actually trained to work on AI systems? So ensuring that we have, the best quality staff working on systems like that. And also looking at the bias in AI systems, or generally looking at software testing and AI. So to date, we really, as an area, testing hasn't been very strong in terms of producing people who have a niche for testing AI systems. We have non-functional testers, we have functional testers, but we've never really considered this. So now it's something that we need to consider going forward. And so there are now ISTQB qualifications that relate to AI and testing. There's also BCS qualifications that relate to AI foundations and elements of understanding AI. So it's not saying that you have to have a degree, but you could have a certificate that means that it shows your competence in this area. And the standards that come out accordingly for this regulation and beyond that are things such as the bias in AI systems standard, which I've mentioned that one because that's one that is actually published. The others that I've talked about in terms of testing, for example, are all being reviewed currently, so they're not necessarily ones I will talk about here. But the bias in AI systems one is an informative standard, and it's one that can be applied to working with AI models and making them better. So it's something that can be integrated in and can be used to strengthen the way that you work with your AI systems and models. So therefore you can be looking at how you can remove the bias, and that in itself will start to improve the quality of the system. So you may come across these things as you, if you went into a quality related role or even a testing related role, or actually data science as well. Obviously that's a big thing. So that would be the biggest area that might be of reference to, but ultimately they all are informative and they all actually improve the quality of the system, which means eventually they'll all be informative and possibly link back to 9001. So I talked about ISO 25010, and you may think I'll never come across these standards, but if you work in a bigger company, you may find that you actually hear about these in relation to quality. And each of these pillars, quality pillars, has a breakdown of the different areas within them that you should be thinking about in the production of your software, and you should be looking at how you can embed these things in. What are you going to do for them in terms of testing or developing software, and also about process improvement and how you can measure, what you're getting in terms of these different areas, and are you meeting these standards that you set yourself as a company, because this is only informative. It's for you to go away and work out how to then embed these within your current processes so that you can do improvement against these pillars of quality. Themes, principles, and processes. So we've got lots and lots of different approaches to running projects. So it could be mind-blowing to you if you're studying and you're thinking about going into tech, but you want to understand a little bit more about what's under the hood. We talk about programming, we talk about testing, we don't talk about themes, principles, and processes until you start to work for a company, and then they start to tell you, well, our projects work under Prince 2, or we follow an agile principle approach, or we follow Kanban processes, etc. So I've got a few here. You've got lean themes, which you may find you hear in conjunction with things like agile, for example. And then you've got I will go through agile because if you work in a smaller company, as I do, these are the principles that we work on. You've got agile, there is Kanban and Scrum, which will all work in tandem with each other. If your approach is Kanban, then you will follow that. If your approach is Scrum, then your teams within your agile organization will follow that. If you work in, say, government or on longer term projects, you may work in a Prince 2 environment, which actually straddles themes, principles, and processes. Or you may work in a waterfall environment, which is a longer term project with a big bang delivery at the end, whereas agile is about iterative delivery, and quality is embedded in all of these. But it's important to understand that it's treated slightly differently in all of these as well. So the approaches are very different. Like, for example, in waterfall, you'd have a much longer time to test a whole system and think about more things around quality that you could embed. With agile, you have very short times to test and turn things around. So the best ways to handle that is to automate as much as possible. And that always then allows to put more testing in, but different types of testing in an automated way. And then you also have other approaches such as Six Sigma. And Six Sigma is really about different levels that your organization can reach in terms of the proving that they meet these standards. And it starts off from very basic to quite advanced. So depending on where your organization is, you may have a different level, but Six Sigma is something that some companies do follow. Majority of government projects will probably be Prince 2 or ITIL, something along those lines, and smaller companies probably follow Agile. Very rarely do they follow waterfall. So in conclusion, I just wanted to read this quote by John Ruskin. "Quality is never an accident. It is always the result of high intention, sincere effort, intelligent direction, and skillful execution." Thank you for listening. If you have any questions, you can ask me after the talk, or you can find me at Nicola L. Martin and on Twitter. NicolaLMartin@gmail.com is my personal email, or you can reach out to me at nicola@adarga.ai, or you can find me on LinkedIn, as I've mentioned, and the link is down below. Thank you for listening.